Hello, so this is a fairly brief tournament review of a tournament I attended last weekend. It's another Milton Keynes one at the Outriders, so it wasn't a GBHL one. But again, it's one of these local ones. I quite like the scene and the people and the vibe, so I kind of try to make it when I can. It's probably going to be the last tournament for a while, since I've kind of got uh, personal stuff going on, I guess. So yeah, it probably means first sort of quarter of next year I'm probably not doing any tournaments. So I thought I'd sort of record how this one went. So it was 1,000 points. It's kind of like a last hurrah type jam, um, and again because it was a last hurrah, I was kind of umming and ahhing about what to take. I thought a legendary legion would be best since the lists are, the way you build lists is changing slightly. So I'm not sure if these are going to be available or not moving forwards. So I thought about Gothmog's Legion at 1,000 points, which was quite fun. I thought about Return of the King again, because that's you can get all the toys at 1,000 points, or even Rise of Theoden. But I settled with one out of the Rise of the Witch King book. Partly because it's new, and partly because Host of the Witch King I thought would be quite funny if I if I just took the three ring wraiths that you can take, and then just took the sort of multiple caster list. So what the Rise of the Witch King Legendary Legion does is the Witch King gets 3 attacks base and goes up to fight 6 if he's fighting another man. He only loses a will when he loses a combat to an enemy in the fight phase. And all ring wraiths can reroll a cast and resist spell dice. So it's basically like the Crown of Morgul for the Witch King, but also giving rerolls to his buddies. So that's pretty grim. So my list's pretty simple. I won't read it out exhaustively because it's just on screen for you now. But it's basically the Witch King on Armoured Horse with Morgul Blade, whole bunch of orcs, and then the Tainted, Dwemer Lake, Shadow of Rudar, Angmor Captain with Shield, and a Barrow White. So it's basically oh, and the Terror Bubble with Legendary Legion goes to 6 rather than 3 around Spirit Hero models, which is grim. So I've got the 3 Deadmarsh Spectres to sort of move stuff around as needed. I've got 3 Ring Wraiths to shut down big enemy models. Shadow of Rudar is just kind of a nice little extra because he can come in, and obviously you choose a hero with him and they're sort of slightly worse at courage and fate, and he can sort of chuck a curse every now and again, so that's okay. Captain's there for a march. Obviously the Barrow White's there as a paralyze. So the concept of the list is basically enemy heroes are doing nothing, and hopefully the terror on the orcs is enough to keep them from breaking long enough for you to win the game. And the orcs can obviously put in good work, but then they can depending on the matchup, you can rely on your sort of orcs to do a lot of the killing and lifting and stuff. But other times, stuff will just be able to murder all the orcs, and it's just a case of hoping they die slowly enough for your sort of key pieces to win the game. That's kind of my concept going in. So yeah, with that, let's just crack on with the games. So my first game was against Ed, who I've played twice before at these tournaments. So first time I played him with Sauron against his Lothlorien, and second time was my Uglock Scouts against his Hobbits. So I came up against his Hobbits again in this one. So his army wasn't a Legendary Legion because it had Aragorn in it, but then it had just a whole bunch of named Hobbits, and then some Battling Brandybucks and Tookish Hunters, and just all the heroes. And we vetoed out of the Maelstrom pool and ended up with Hold Ground, which is the rush to the middle one. I didn't actually realise this because I thought games were always played on a 4x4, but apparently the match play guide recommends 6x4 at 1,000 points, so we're playing on 6x4, which is interesting because suddenly there's 2 table edges you don't really want to come on because they're further away from the middle. So that was interesting. So the first half of this game's not super interesting, to be fair, because basically I went first, but I was able to keep all of my models together. Really, there were sort of two rivers which sort of cut the board into thirds, sort of long ways. And I had a captain and Shadow of Rudar deploy on one side of the river. Oh, and the Barrow White, sorry. And then on the other side of the river, I had I think I had the Dwimmerlake and Tainted turn up turn 1. So I was broadly sort of together in that area. And then Ed brought his dudes on, and he managed to sort of broadly avoid where I was, but he was very spread out. So Aragorn and some hunters came on sort of opposite my Shadow of Rudar. His main force came on sort of opposite my force in the middle between the two rivers, and then his leader Merry came on sort of one corner, Farmer Maggot and some other dudes came on another corner. So he was sort of slightly spread out, but it wasn't too bad. His Maelstrom rolls were pretty horrific, but yeah. But Fatty ended up coming on behind the Shadow of Rudar, and Lobelia came on next to my whole battle line. So again, early game, not too much to say. I just sort of move up to the middle. I sort of purposely trigger all his traps just to sort of set them off, and then turn 2, the Witch King sort of comes on and kills Lobelia and joins the main force. So most of my army's now 100% together. Shadow of Rudar goes over to kill Fatty Bolger, beats him in combat, causes 1 wound, and then Fatty's hiding in the corner, so Shadow of Rudar basically has to leave him because he's sort of not worth the time it'll take to kill him, so he has to sort of come back. So I thought he could take a detour to kill Fatty and not really waste too much time whilst his buddies went through some woods, but alas, it was not to be, and Mr. Bolger was okay. Again, so all the traps are triggered, and the sort of broad strokes of the game is Hobbits sort of chipping away at me with shooting. So all 6 of the guys coming on with the Shadow of Rudar died to shooting. Basically, I sort of pushed up into the middle and sort of completely controlled the objective in that way. And I think the time caught us both out, to be honest, because we had like an hour left and we hadn't really fought combat, and the game's the best part of 3 hours, but I think it's just Maelstrom on with so many models on both sides, it kind of just ate into the time. And I think I must admit with this one, my broad plan was okay, but I genuinely just played like really horrifically this game. I just I don't know what it was, my brain just kind of couldn't do it, and I just lots of little things I messed up. I actually can't recall now because it was a few days ago, but I just remember getting so frustrated with how I was playing, which then made me play worse. And then I just couldn't I don't know what it was. I just couldn't focus my mind. I was in one of those weird sort of places where I just find it really hard to sort of concentrate and get a plan together. But he sort of had almost a semicircle around me because he tried to. I think his plan was to sort of bait me away from the objective, sort of force me to run past it to deal with his shooting and stones and stuff, and then sort of, punch a few holes in my orcs, because I was actually losing a fair amount of orcs by this point to shooting and stuff, and then sort of trickle through with hobbits, and then just outnumber me sort of behind my main line, and there wasn't really too much I could do to sort of stop it. So I set some Wargriders to the ford where Farmer Maggot was, to hopefully just sort of deal with them. But I forgot about, I can't even remember which hobbit it is, but the one who gives them the fight buff. So I basically got surrounded, and they, to be fair, I've used some pretty guff dice rolls on Ed's part. My Wargriders didn't die immediately, even though they probably should have. And they did kind of hold things up over there. Sort of in the middle bit where I was up against sort of the hunters between these two buildings, the Tookish hunters and stuff, with sort of Sam and Pippin, and I can't remember what the name of the guy who throws stones on the 6 does an auto wound. I sort of pushed up there again. My ringwave sort of floated around, didn't really do anything, but meanwhile Aragorn was sort of making his way around one of the fords to sort of take on my line, trying to pin in a whole bunch of sheriffs between the river and a building. And there's not too much to say in terms of overall commentary of the combats. I think there's a couple of good turns where the hobbits killed a bunch of orcs, but then if I won a combat I'd probably killing a hobbit. So I think it overall went fairly well for me, and I was able to sort of block him up away from the objectives. But just in terms of the general stupidity that I was doing, Aragorn, I left an orc in range of Aragorn to begin with, because I was kind of counting on Aragorn being out of combat for a turn. But because of where I've left this orc right next to the river, Aragorn was able to move into him, combat round, and then get right on top of my captain and Barrow White around the back. And I was sort of counting on Aragorn having to come within paralysed range, and then sort of deal with that, and then just shut Aragorn down. But again, because of the general stupidity, I put myself at risk there. And again, just again on this whole stupidity hype, I chucked a transfix at Aragorn, and I think I chucked a few things at him already. So he spent his last will to stop the transfix, and then I sent the Witch King in to charge him, and I forgot to actually cast a spell with him, because so in my head I transfixed Aragorn, but I actually forgot to throw the transfix from the Witch King after I baited out his last will. So I went into Aragorn, and then obviously he wasn't paralysed, and I was like, oh yeah, crap, I actually forgot to... So obviously Aragorn struck up, I struck up, he beat me, and I was like, oh Jesus Christ. Because he had Anduril as well, and I was like, oh, here we go. But somehow he obviously won the strike off, because of course that was going to happen. And yeah, he only caused 1 wound on the Witch King, which I saved, and then subsequently I got lucky with the heroic move roll off. Was able to paralyse Aragorn, and then I think it took me a couple of turns to kill him. But yeah, so Aragorn was kind of out of the picture by then. But that's what I mean, in that I just sort of did stuff, and it was really dumb, and it just really vexed me, even though I was the one doing it. And I think at the start I forgot that I caused terror as well, so a bunch of hobbits charged in, and then about halfway through the sort of term where we were getting stuck into each other, I was like, oh yeah, you need to do some terror tests from now on, please. So it's just that. It's just one of those. But the main story is that I held up his line there, and I held up his line sort of between these two buildings. I just had enough orcs there, and I pulled some guys sort of into a back line, and basically formed a sort of like a concave around the objective, so that I was within 6 inches, but the Merry's warband wasn't. So I sort of boxed him out, and again Sam was trying to combat in from sort of the area where all his hunters were at the back, and I was able to sort of combat into him with the Witch King and shut that down. And then where my Warg Riders were now sort of being dealt with, again there were some hobbits trickling in there, and I managed to send in the Tainted and Dwemer Lake, and Dwemer Lake sort of floated around, kind of attacking Merry's warband, and then coming to intercept these other guys, and the Tainted sort of got involved as well. So I was able to sort of stem the tide of hobbits sort of trickling past me. I'm not sure I caused a wound on Merry, actually. So I've sort of misplaced my pad that had all the final scores of the games, to be honest. But the game ended. I don't think it ended naturally. I think it went to time. And basically I won because I was near the middle, with lots more stuff, and I think I managed to have it so that only maybe a couple of hobbits were in there, but I had a whole bunch of orcs and the Witch King and stuff by the end of it. So yeah, I got that one by the skin of my teeth, and I don't know if I really deserved it, in that the overall battle plan was fine, but then Ed played how he needed to play in terms of baiting me off the objective, so I didn't just castle up around it basically, and in a way he couldn't really deal with, and so he kind of he played how he needed to play, and it just basically didn't go his way. Yeah, I think that's basically it, really. But so I lucked out there, but I enjoyed the game a lot. I was aware that I was getting annoyed at myself, so I had to sort of make sure I didn't give off bad vibes whilst doing that. But no, I enjoyed the game, and always a pleasure to play him, obviously. So it's a good one to start on, actually. So yeah, we'll go into game 2. So game 2, I was against Austin, who brought Return of the King. So he had Aragorn, Legolas, King of the Dead, and then 3 banners, because he had the normal banner model, and then 2 heralds he was using as banners as well. So lots and lots of rerolls, because obviously Aragorn is a banner to spirit models as well, and obviously most of the army is a spirit model. So all the rerolls. And I felt slightly bad because the last time I played Austin, I had another Angmar nonsense list. So it was obviously I came in with the epitome of all Angmar nonsense lists this time. And we were playing Seize the Prize. So I felt slightly less bad about my list here, to be honest, because I have no way of dealing with the Army of the Dead, because I can't charge them with the king around, because obviously Harbinger of Evil makes me courage 1, and I'm not getting charges off really. And yes, I can shut down heroes, but ultimately his warriors are going to grind my warriors. So I kind of went into this game thinking I have to quickly get the objective, give it to someone with a cavalry. Give it to a cavalry model, and then they just sort of zoom off, and I have to do that before Legolas dismounts all of my riders. So again, he's sort of spread out a bit, so he covered sort of three sort of areas and converged in the middle, with Aragorn sort of in the middle calling a free march. I just blobbed up massively in the middle and just called a march for my captain at the front. I didn't really deploy in any particular way, and I didn't really have a plan. I was kind of more just like, here's a massive blob, let's move it forwards. So I got outplayed immediately because Austin called a move and marched onto the objective with a Rider of the Dead, dismounted, picked it up immediately. I think he went after me as well. It's just funny because I've done that exact same thing before, but it completely just did not occur to me. I just felt like a right idiot. I think it's just one of those days. But I think after about sort of 2 or 3 turns into it, I managed to like actually turn my brain on, and then I sort of got into it and all the sort of big brain moves. So it was so it sort of picks up a bit as the game goes on in terms of my actual like level of skill. But basically the next turn. I think I must have won priority or something, I think, and I basically just hit that guy with a black dart holding the objective, and killed him, and was then able to move my entire battle line over the objective, so that basically a random spearman who's kind of in the 3rd rank would have picked it up. And yeah, basically this helps me because so this could have gone very differently immediately. If I'd have failed to kill that guy, which, yes, I had 3 bites at the cherry with the ring wraiths, and I was lucky to get it off first time, so it wasn't a big deal. But I didn't need to worry about charging Austin. He had to worry about charging me because I had the objective. So as far as I'm concerned, I can just sort of set up a battle line and hide my objective behind it. And if he doesn't charge me, great. And if he does, great, because then I'm not taking courage tests. So it kind of changed the dynamic of the game immediately. But the story of this game as well, just because I'm trying to be brief because I'm aware I waffle on quite a lot, is basically I bully Aragorn the whole game. So basically every turn Aragorn's getting transfixed, or actually no, it's pretty much it. Yeah, transfixed at this point. My Barrow White's not doing too much at the moment, to be fair. All I'm trying to do is shut down heroes. So in the meantime, Legolas shoots the Witch King off his horse immediately, and then he shoots the Dwimmerlake off his horse. The Dwimmerlake got the objective off of the spearman, was sort of ready to go next turn, and then that's when Legolas shot him off his horse. So that wasn't good. So basically what I was trying to do was shut down Aragorn and Legolas before they could do anything. So as long as I wasn't too worried about the order of movement. So as long as I shut Legolas down before he shot and Aragorn off before he fought, I just kind of didn't care. And again, it meant Aragorn was fighting like a few random orcs. So I was just like, that's fine. I don't have to kill him at this point, as long as he's just sort of shut down every turn. But the problem is the King of the Dead and his warband were swinging around my left flank, and I sort of set up a sort of a screening line to basically slow him down and sort of stop the combats really going anywhere if he wants to call a combat. And then other than that, just being a pain and trying to die slowly. But yeah, eventually my left flank basically collapses, but by this time I'm able to sort of shift my focus into pushing through on my right, and I sort of managed to open up a hole after a while, and I'm able to give the objective to the Tainted, and he kind of has to fight his way through, ends up sort of getting out the back, and he sort of tries to run past Legolas, sort of. that's all good. And then in the meantime, I think I managed to kill Aragorn. I can't remember if I ended up paralysing him or what, but I did something, and then I put the Witch King in him with the Morgul blade, and that was Aragorn gone. And that was pretty much it really. And then I did break, but I managed to run the Tainted off the back of the board. And again, this was kind of a case of there was a couple of warriors trying to chase him down, so it was just sort of chucking black darts at them and stuff, and trying to keep Legolas occupied whilst I was doing that. So in the end, I did break. I didn't have a ton of models left. I wasn't really that close to breaking him. Wasn't a million miles off, but I wasn't really close either. But the good thing is, because I gave the objective to the Tainted, he had about 5 will left, so he was never going to fail a courage test to run off the back. But it was actually a very close game, because if the Tainted had been dismounted, I'd either be trying to hold on to the objective in my table half to keep it safe, to try and win that way. I can't remember if maybe I'd have to put it in his table half to sort of tip it if, depending how leaders, kills and breaking came out. But the trouble is, he's probably going to 25% me, and then and then the game doesn't even end at that point, because it's when both sides 25%. So I think what would happen is I'd probably get stuck holding the objective, surrounded, and then killed, and then it taken off me. So having the Tainted alive, sorry, not even alive, just mounted on a horse, basically saved the day. But again, Austin played pretty well overall. Like, his warriors just absolutely rinsed my warriors. I think the only thing is maybe just using Aragorn's free might to do a heroic resolve on him might have helped, because even if he's not allowed to move or whatever, they'll keep him alive, and then that's a leader thing. And the other thing I was thinking is, maybe if Legolas had been out of sort of black dart / transfix range, he might have been able to get the Tainted off his horse. And then again, like I was saying, I don't really see how I can win. But it kind of wasn't obvious at the time, to be honest, because it's I didn't really think about that at the time either. But yeah, it was good. It was a good game. It was a lot closer than it kind of ended up being. Because I think I killed his leader. He broke me, but I got the objective off his side. So I think it was like a 9-3 or something like that. But yeah, felt a lot closer. And again, even turn 2, it could have gone totally different if he'd have managed to hold on to the objective. As obviously I can sort of compel and transfix and black dart, but ultimately I'm not getting my orcs into his warriors, and then it's just, he's able to pick the fights, and then just, I don't see how I win that. So there's literally a couple of things, the Tainted being on a horse, and then me managed to pick up the objective turn 2 is basically how I lucked out into winning. But it was a really good game, actually. I really enjoyed it. And the good thing about playing Army of the Dead is I felt less like a complete dick for taking the list I did, because obviously it's like, yes, I can, I shut down Legolas and Aragorn, they did nothing the whole game really, apart from dismounting 2 of my ring wraiths. But yeah, my orcs should, you just walk through my orcs, so it was a bit like, it was actually quite challenging and interesting and fun, so that was good. So that was it. So on to the third and last game. So last game I played Sam, who also brought Return of the King. So as an aside, I'm glad I didn't bring Return of the King, because then that would have been a lot of Return of the Kings. But his list was a bit different. So he had Aragorn, the King of the Dead, but then he had 2 heralds. I think at the start he was saying you didn't rate heralds, and to be fair, in the Return of the King list, I don't rate heralds a huge amount, although one to sort of give the king might is quite helpful. But in this case, it was very helpful because it makes spirit models resistant to magic around him. So I sort of saw 2 heralds and I was like, man. But we got the pool with all the sort of killy scenarios. We ended up playing to the death. Because I vetoed Lords of Battle, because 100% I would just lose. I was quietly sort of hoping he would take Contest of Champions, because I could probably feed the Witch King a few Warriors of the Dead, and then just transfix Aragorn out of the game. And yeah, but in the end we ended up onto the death, which I was not super confident about, because obviously as per my last game, when it actually came to just killing, I got absolutely rinsed. so it's only because I was playing the objective that I won. Like if it was a straight up punching match, I'd have lost quite badly. But Salzus was interesting because he had a whole bunch of Riders of the Dead, so obviously very very punchy. Yeah, and so this one had a river sort of going from short edge to short edge, dividing the table in half. I felt a bit mean, but I just deployed back from the river because I was just thinking, well, it doesn't affect him and it does affect me. So I was just like, I don't want to fight in the river, and I was just thinking, let's get stuck into each other, but I won't fight you in the river. so I did make him come to me and fight on my side of the river. Not too far. Like I wasn't just sort of being obnoxious. It was just a case of like, I'll fight next to the river, but I won't fight in the river. Again, sorry, my memory is a bit tough because, like I said, I've been under the weather pretty much since the tournament actually. So it's been a few days. But the main thing I remember is that Sam's dice were like appalling. so obviously there's a whole bunch of like roll-offs because we're the same fight, and they just all seem to go to me. I seem to win the key priorities. And so that sort of sets the tone for the game a bit. But my overall strategy was just to have my line of orcs and just kind of hold the line a bit. One thing I did do is because the heralds were both either side of the king, so there's like a big bubble in the middle where they're resistant to magic, which I wasn't pleased about. But there were a bunch of riders off on my left and his right, and they were out of the bubble range, and I was just like, well, I'm going to repeatedly black dart the riders because that's pretty good for me because they're expensive models, and I'm happy to sort of burn through the will and even a bit of might to take them off the table, because obviously that's, if they charge into 2 orcs, win the combat, that's 2 dead orcs, and doing that every turn is pretty nasty. And this was another let's shut down Aragorn game. So I think I was just going to shut down Aragorn. I think I paralysed him and then he died. It's kind of as simple as that, really. And I think I chucked a couple of curses at him. I did a sap wheel before he even got into combat. The mathematicians out there will probably tell me I'm wrong, but I don't tend to resist a sap wheel because I think if you chuck, because I did a 1 dice sap wheel, got a 5, and I was thinking, if you spend 1 wheel trying to resist it, unless you're willing to spend like a whole bunch of might, if you roll like a 1 or something, then you lose that, and then you lose D3 as well. So if you spend 1 to resist it, then there's like a 2 in 3 chance that you then lose the other 2. I think if math is not my strong suit. So I wouldn't have resisted it. That's kind of a moot point actually, because on the D3 I rolled a 3, so it's like so Aragorn was kind of at my mercy the whole game. So again, it was one of those where potentially I'd have maybe just repeatedly done a heroic resolve to maybe try and keep him alive, if not really doing anything. So obviously when he went down, the sort of banner effect went down, because he had a separate banner, which I used my Spectre to sort of make him fail a courage test and run backwards, which is quite handy, and then I black darted him when he didn't have any friends to pick up the banner. So I didn't actually do both of those steps intentionally. I kind of moved him backwards to get the banner out of play once Aragorn was dead. But then I was thinking, what do I do with the ring wraith? I was like, well, no one's picking up that banner, so boom. So the plan sort of formed whilst I was doing it. And again, I lost loads of orcs this game, but I managed to kind of through attritional stuff and just sort of black darts and just stuff like that, I managed to whittle down the Warriors of the Dead. I managed to paralyse the king as well, which was pretty wild because he had resistant to magic and then 6 will as well. So I think he resisted a couple of things with the King of the Dead, but then with the paralyse, I think he rolled 3 dice and it just didn't come off, and so I managed to paralyse him with sort of a very cheeky like 1 or 2 dice paralyse. And I did play this one fairly well, but I misplayed the Witch King because I sensed the time had arrived to sort of get him stuck in, so I sent him around sort of away from the King of the Dead to sort of combat, and then yeah, just do a combat, kill one warrior of the dead, combat into another, and then that's that's actually pretty good, because of how expensive they are. But it ended up one of those things where you started the turn with 3 might. I called a combat, and I had to spend like a might to win, then like a might to kill or something. I was a bit like, oh, sod it, because I think it's kind of in the bag because the King of the Dead's paralysed. I think I'm it's probably heading in a direction that I'm going to win at this point. So I was like, oh, sod it. And I knew it was stupid when I did it, but I was like, oh, I'll just do it anyway. Which is, always good. But what was worse, because I think I had loads of might, to be fair, because I only was spending it on moves. I wasn't really doing anything else with it. So then I got cocky, and you can probably see where this is going with a paralysed king and the Witch King sort of mounted. I was just like, nah, sod it, I'll send him in the Morgul Blade, the King of the Dead, because he's the only thing that can really deal with the Witch King, or or even possibly the other ring wraiths, maybe. So I was just like, well, I'll go and polish him off. But then I think obviously he was paralysed, but I failed to kill him. And then the subsequent turn he woke up on a 6. And then he won the strike off using a Herald's he won the heroic move off, and then he won the strike off using Herald's Will to power up the king. He won the combat, and then I was like, oh, here we go. And luckily the Witch King, I think he suffered 2 wounds off the king or something, but I managed to save both of them with Will. And I was just like, Jesus, James. But I called a move the following turn and won that, and just got the Witch King out of there. And but that was the most stupid thing I did. Other than that, I played a pretty solid game, but just that one move, as soon as he rolled that 6 to unparalyze him, I was like, yeah, this has been a drastic miscalculation. Then the game ended shortly after that, because I quartered him. And I think the king and the heralds were okay, but I couldn't really deal with the heralds, because the only thing I could do was black dart stuff to, that's what I was doing with the riders. I didn't know how to deal with them, so I just sort of black darted them, and that was working. But with the heralds, it's like, well, they got 2 wounds. My orcs aren't charging them. They're resistant to magic, so like I didn't even try and sap will them, which maybe I should have done to sort of stop the king doing so much spicy stuff. But then the king was paralysed, so I was a bit like, well, yeah. So I don't think I played it like optimally, but I think it went fairly well. And the dice helped. Sam's dice were like trash, so that had a bearing on things. So that's it. So 3 out of 3 games, which is good. Because not all the lists were super spicy. I felt pretty like I'd misjudged it bringing Host to the Witch King. But the trouble is sometimes I've brought like pretty guff lists. Like one time I brought I can't remember what it's called. It's like the Rangers, that list. So I brought Arathorn and some Dunedain, and it was good enough. But that's when the Bears came out. So a few people brought Eorlingas and just absolutely slapped. And then and I was like, okay, well, I'll bring Helm next time. And then everyone brings sort of fairly mellow lists. And this is kind of one of those where I thought there might be a few good lists at 1,000 points, so I'll bring something relatively good. But and then I came and there wasn't anything sort of too gross. I felt like I misjudged it, but then because I drew Army of the Dead twice, it wasn't so bad, because actually that's like a really good really good way to just smash me up my list. And hobbits as well, they that's a good counter if they can sort of sit back and shoot and throw stones and subjective based and stuff. So I didn't think my list was too gross in that context. So I don't feel too bad about it. Though maybe next time I'll bring a more cuddly list, but I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, so I won the tournament overall with 3 wins, and then with the sort of prize voucher, I was going to buy a new bolt action rulebook, because I've still not upgraded to V3 yet, but they didn't have it at the shop, so I bought a Mumak instead, which is like a natural progression from a rulebook not wanting any more models to like, I'll just buy another Mumak. It was a fun tournament. It was good to see a lot of the sort of guys from the sort of local area, and that's going to be me done for tournaments for a little while, so I'll have to catch you guys when I catch you next year with new edition.